feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding. From the words I spit, so sharp, so freezing, so cold. Behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. And I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I don't lie at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll soon be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have...
Hello everyone, how are you today? I am Kelly, the Detroit Atheist Queen, and this is Secular Activism Unfiltered, and we are seeing me on both my channel and on Black Non-Believers main page as well. So with me I have a special guest who really doesn't need any introduction, but just in case somebody is living under a rock and just submerged, please tell everybody who you are.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cynthia McDonald. I am the lead affiliate with Black Non-Believers in Chicago.
I think you might be muted.
Oh, am I? Let's see. No, I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
It might be me then. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hi, people. Just out here chilling on Detroit Atheist Queen's platform.
There we go. Let's try this again.
Okay.
Okay, what? You know what? I'll be right back. I'm going to change my device because some reason this is not working.
Okay.
I don't know.
I know. I'm looking at the chat and it does say that they can hear me. I am frozen though. Kind of slow going though. Let me pop that out. Hi, AJ. Nice to see you here. If you all can still hear me, just give me a thumbs up while we're waiting on Kelly to come back. Just let us know that we're actually coming through.
Okay, let's try this now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, that was my fault because I don't know what's wrong with this tablet. It's been acting up. So I'm on my iPhone. I'm on my iPhone now.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That's not what I wanted it to be on, but okay, we are. Okay, so if anybody's been under a rock and they don't know who you are, please give a brief who you are.
Right. Okay. Take two. Bam. Action.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. My name is Cynthia. I am the lead affiliate organizer here in Chicago for Black Non-Believers. I'm also the channel owner and current host of a show called The Roots Matter, which explores topics on news, politics, social justice, secularism, and they all collide on your interwebs for the entire world to see. Um, I am an atheist. I have been an atheist since 2018, and I am just excited to be here. Oh yeah, I do the work of socials. I'm a social worker here in the city, and that's basically me in a nutshell. I have a kid,
Yes.
all that other great stuff. Yeah,
She's my role model.
shouldn't be, but okay.
Okay. So, maybe a week or so ago, I had Kip Davis on, and we talked about the difference between biblical slavery and chattel slavery and deep dived into that. And so I thought that why not finish it off and talk about today?
Hmm.
And what I've been hearing a lot since I was little is the 40 acres and a mule thing,
Yeah.
the respirations, which we've never got, never heard anything about. I guess it was supposed to have been something, then they end up reneging on that law, whatever is supposed to happen. But
Hmm.
then later on, you find out how slave owners got respiration.
Yep, they did.
So I'm sitting here like really stuck. And then they say stuff like, well, too, it's too long of time spanned between slavery and now. And nobody that was a slave is still alive today. So why should the people now get that?
Hmm. Yeah, lots to unpack there. Um,
Yes.
so let's kind of start off with the 40 acres and a mule, right? Um, that was on General Order number 15 by William Tecumseh Sherman. So, as we all know, if you all are familiar with the whole thing called a civil war
Yes.
that was fought here in these United States, there was the opening or chance for slaves to leave their places of work and to join the Union Army. So at first, this was not something that was going to be open for slaves to do. Matter of fact, when we had the first shot that happened, and you had a series of different states. Well, you had a series of different states in the South started to secede from the Union. I think Virginia was one of them, Georgia was one of them, South Carolina, North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, you had your first shots that were um, pushed towards the Union from the Confederacy. The Confederacy, they drafted their own constitution. They had their own president, vice president, etc. And they basically formed because they were concerned that when Abraham Lincoln, became president, that he would free the slaves and abolish chattel slavery because he was an abolitionist. Now, one thing about Lincoln was that he may have been an abolitionist. He did not particularly care for slavery, but he was not necessarily so pro-black, and nor did he believe black people were on the level of white people. He was very much so a racist. And he even said that if it were between keeping the Union together versus abolishing slavery, he would choose, the former. So fast forward to we're in the midst of the war. The Union is losing, even though they have better technology, they have better routes, things of that nature. They and even more resources, but the South is whooping their ass. So it was at the behest of Frederick Douglass, who was an abolitionist. He was an author. He did a bunch of different speaking, and he was also an advisor to Lincoln. Convinced Lincoln to have the slaves come from, who come from the South, because what was happening is that you had a bunch of slaves that started to run away during this time period, because there's still, chaos, because like the owners are now fighting in the war. So slaves took it upon themselves to free themselves and to run to Union camps. Now, the Union generals are writing back to Washington saying, what are we going to do with these people? Frederick Douglass said, let them fight. Matter of fact, let me see if I can see the quote specifically that Frederick Douglass said about um, the the slave fighting for their freedom. Uh, while I'm looking for this, talk amongst yourselves. I give you a topic. The Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor empire. Discuss. Okay. Let's see. So I'm looking for this, and he said, da, 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 da. Okay, Frederick Douglass quote about letting the slaves fight in the Civil War. Google is our friend, people. So, according to Google, it says Frederick Douglass strongly advocated for African Americans to fight in the Civil War, arguing that taking up arms was essential to ending slavery, securing citizenship, and proving their manhood. His famous 1863 call, "Men of Color to Arms," declared, "This is our golden opportunity. Let us accept it and forever wipe the dark reproaches unsparingly hurled against us by our enemies." He then later said, "Who would be free themselves must strike the blow." He argued and emphasized that Black people had to fight to own their liberation. He said, "Once let the Black man get upon his person the brass letter US, let him get an eagle on his button and a musket on his shoulder and bullets in his pocket, and there is no power on earth which can deny that he has earned his right to citizenship." So basically, his argument was that if the slaves who were born here had the opportunity to fight, they show not only their loyalty to keeping the Union together, but also to earn their freedom, because they're not only doing it with their labor, but they're doing it with their defense of the country. So, and also too, I know that like the Great Lost Cause likes to comport that Civil War was about states' rights. It was about heritage. It was about preserving the culture in the South. But we all know, if you have an IQ above room temperature, that the Civil War was fight because the South wanted to keep slavery as an institution. So once you actually had soldiers come in, ex-slaves, that got their brass, that got their muskets, and they were defending the Union, there was definitely the tides of the Civil War change, and the Union ended up winning. And so after that happened, because you had the Emancipation Proclamation that was actually enacted in January of 1863, which basically declared that all slaves, mostly in the South, were free. Not necessarily in the North, but in the South they were free. And
Okay.
then further down, you ended up
Question
being,
about that.
yeah,
There were slaves in the North as well. I
yes,
wasn't.
yes, there
I
were slaves
never
in the
knew.
North. The
See, I never
you
knew that the whole time.
Yeah,
I'm
there
living on
were
this.
yeah, there were slaves in the North. There were slaves everywhere. It's just that in the North, I mean, the institution mostly thrived in the South because the South was mostly an agrarian area. They grew crops, they had farms, things, et cetera, et cetera. But you still had slaves in the North that were maids, butlers, day laborers. A lot of times, one of the things that owners would do is that they would lend out their slaves to work either on other farms and other industries, and whatever the slave earned as far as like labor wages are concerned would go directly back to the owner. So yeah, but there were slaves all over. It's just that, and also you have to also remember the Fugitive Slave Act as well. Before there was a Civil War, that if a slave happened to run away in the South, they were not automatically free just because they came to the North. The North had the obligation to send that slave back if caught. If they were arrested for whatever arbitrary reason that they were arrested for, and they were caught, they had to go back under this constitutional law. And
Yeah.
and matter of fact, I mean, there were I would open it up for everybody to really do research on the North, because there were plantations up here too. There were plantations in Illinois, there were plantations in Michigan, Ohio, all that. You know, it's just that it wasn't as prevalent, if that makes
I got
sense.
you.
Mm,
Now, years ago, I went to, it's called the Uncle Tom Cabin when I went there, but now
mm,
it's called the Jebediah Benson Museum. And this is in Canada, right outside of Windsor, Windsor. But anyway, you learn that they can actually, even though they went to Canada, the slave catchers, God, they can still get them in there and bring them back.
yep, yep,
So the whole time we was stuck, Canada, you free.
mm-hmm,
That it was necessarily the truth even then.
right, exactly.
So that
And
whole journey they did, they could be turned. That
yeah,
kind of really got me when I saw that. I was
yeah,
like a teenager when I went to that museum. I need to
slave
go again.
patrols, slave patrols went everywhere. Slave patrols basically are our modern day police, and they would be enacted whether if you were in the South, in the North, in different countries like Mexico. Matter of fact, that whole "Remember the Alamo" and the whole um, defend the Alamo war between Mexico and the United States. Mexico, all the territory like Texas, California, New
Hmm.
Mexico, or Arizona,
Nevada.
Nevada, all that was Mexican land.
Hmm.
The main reason why they went in and took that land and also fought with Mexicans is because Mexico would not send slaves back. There are towns right now that are predominantly the descendants of Afro Latinas that have intermixed with the population in Mexico. Um, and there even have like some that built like these townships where they would keep some of their West African roots alive, um, by doing the storytelling, the dancing, even like intermixing some of some native dishes along with some West African dishes, and even some of the dishes that they learn how to make in the South. So this whole thing about how the tendrils of slavery was very much so an entire America's things. It wasn't just in the United States, right? And even though like you had like different countries that had different ways of how they dealt with slavery, as time went on, even though that Canada usually had that particular policy that they would not send slaves back, um, if a slave patrol followed a slave to Canada, they would definitely capture them and bring them back. And a lot of times, authorities in that particular place would look away. Ain't that lovely? So
Very lovely.
very lovely. So
Very
let's so
lovely.
let's go back to this whole general order, the 40 acres and a mule.
Yes.
So after the Civil War happens, you get the 13th Amendment, all of a sudden you have over 4 million slaves that are no longer slaves. So what do we do with them? Um, so there was a meeting of leaders in the African American community, most of them preachers and farmers, who
Yeah.
met with General Tecumseh Sherman, who was a very prominent prominent general in the Union Army at that time. And he said, what is it that you all want, um, as far as like how you are going to survive? And they said, give us land. Give us land so that we can basically till our own soil, grow our own food, build our own homes, build our own communities. Because majority of slaves at that time, their skill set was, agrarian. They were
Yeah.
farmers. They grew, and a lot of times you had, if depending on how benevolent their overlords were, you had some slaves that had maybe like a small plot of land that they did grow their own food, you know. Um, did raise their own animals. There wasn't a lot, but just, just depends on how nice your master was, I guess. So since this is the skill set of them, that's what they said, give us land, right?
Yeah.
Well, so you did actually have the general order that said that, hey, every slave family is going to receive 40-acre land grants. Now that order ended up getting rescinded because the Union Army, and also after Lincoln was assassinated, you ended up having Andrew Johnson become president, and he was a staunch racist from the Dixiecrat Party. He was not a Republican. And the Dixiecrat, uh, Andrew Johnson said, "Fuck that. Let's go ahead and roll this bad boy back." And any slave owner or former slave owner who basically declared their loyalty to the Union, they got their land back. And that's the part. And not only that, they were paid money, 300 up to $300 per slave that was lost because of the Civil War. So
That's
yes,
that
they
is so
got
fair.
yeah, they got their reparations. I mean, basically it was a an expansion of the Homestead Act of 1862. Then you had the Southern Home Act, a Southern Homestead Act, and basically uh, whites who lost their property because it was confiscated by the Union Army, who lost their slaves, who lost all these different things. This could say, "Hey, I declare that I am a citizen again because reasons," and they got their stuff back. But that left, you know, slaves who were supposed to get their land grants. A lot of them either got them confiscated, or it was very few that were able to hold on to them. Matter of fact, like, that area in southern Georgia, South Carolina, that's off the coast of South Carolina, the Gullah Geechee, those particular lands and townships were because of the General Order 15. And a lot of times they had to fight to keep their land because you had white settlers that would try to come and kick them off and reclaim that land for themselves.
Wow.
Mm.
Ah, makes me even more angry every time I hear about the injustice that we dealt with and are still dealing with. Because I'm looking at it in a whole nother perspective, even besides slavery. Even today, when you look at civil rights movements and the injustice we have with that, that's a way to give a vision too. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong though.
Hmm.
Like we have been dealing with unfair treatment since we've
Since our ancestors arrived.
colonizers, since the colonizers took over
Mm.
and snatched us up out of our home and stuff. Like
Right.
there's no way that. And I think it was so funny how somebody put it, and it was like we don't even know our history, everything.
Hmm.
So now we gotta pay to get a DNA test
Mm.
because that was stripped from us as well. So
Hmm.
nothing. We laid bare, and these people, like I was talking, I was on Seth was on my, I was on Seth Amber's the Passe channel, and I was talking about how many of us had to become sharecroppers.
Right.
And we became sharecroppers because we didn't have any other skills. Some of us had to stay at the plantation
Mm-hmm.
because where were we going to go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was damn near slavery itself. And we got a little bit of money, but it wasn't much.
Sometimes not at all. I
Yeah,
so let okay.
yeah.
So let's talk about sharecropping, shall we?
Yes, we
So
can. Yes,
yeah. So it sharecropping as an organization and institution is way more diabolical than it's led on to be.
yes.
So with sharecropping, we first have to look at like the timeline between from the Civil War. Then we had 7 years of Reconstruction. A lot of times, people sometimes call that the golden age of Black politics because you actually had ex-slaves that ran for federal Congress and won. Um, Robert Smalls, the one who stole the Southern boat and sailed it
Oh,
all the
yeah,
way
yeah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
he was one of the
Yeah.
first
That was a
Black
hero.
yes, yes, he was. He was one of the and sailed him and some enslaved to freedom in the North and received refuge, and also spied and went and had a few runs back and forth between the South and the North. He was one of the first Congress people, I believe, in South Carolina. You had at least about like 7 to 10, I want to say. Don't quote me. I have to look that up. But you had a bunch of slaves, ex-slaves, that actually ran for Congress and won. And that was during that 7 year period of Reconstruction. Now, what ended up happening was that you had like some reforms per se that was gone out, including occupation of the South to protect ex-slaves. You had land grants to build schools and colleges for slaves, ex-slaves at that time period. Um, you had, matter of fact, like one of the people who ended up like building a bunch of schools, along with another white philanthropist who was also Jewish, was Booker T. Washington.
Oh, I didn't know.
And yeah, they built a bunch of schools. I need to look up the gentleman that he worked with, but they built a bunch of schools in the South, and you even had folks that were up into the civil rights movement that actually graduated from these schools. I want to say these are 11 schools. Don't quote me, but I'm going to have to look that up. You guys, I do apologize. I should have all this stuff written down.
Well,
when
you didn't know what was going to be asked or anything like that.
uh,
You didn't know
uh,
the questions that we were gonna. Well, you kind of knew the vicinity, but it's
yeah,
up for where we was gonna format this discussion. I didn't know either.
yeah,
I just talked about what all I knew. It's not really much,
mm,
you know.
yeah. I mean, well, like all that stuff is important because like it's it really just goes to show like how all these things are interconnected, right?
Yeah.
um so yeah, so he Rothschild, the Rosenwald, that's the name. So he partnered with philanthropist Julius Rosenwald to build nearly 5,000 schools for Black children across the segregated South. And like I said, a bunch of Black children, including, if we ever heard of the name John Lewis, who was a congressperson who died and is known for his civil rights activism and also pushing for voters' rights. He was educated in one of these Rosenwald schools. Okay, so like, and then you had the Freedoms Bureau enacted that was supposed to basically dole out things to help ex-slaves with housing, employment, education, food. That was basically, and they had like different districts that were set up throughout the Union in order for ex-slaves to come here and to get resources in order for them to live. And then you even had the Freedoms Bank that was established, Freedmen's Bank that was established, that ex-slaves would have put in a lot of times their money, their life savings in order for them to build wealth. But unfortunately, that was an institution that was basically frauded by the people who ran it previously. It was a series of white men who actually had the bank, who would use those funds that they had from ex-slaves to fund whatever pet projects that they had. And at that particular time, there was no such thing as an FDIC, so the accounts were not insured. So a lot of people ended up losing their money. Um, um, Frederick Douglass ended up taking over that institution after like 3 years when it was losing money. He even put in over $15,000 of his own money within the bank trying to save it, but by that time it was just too late. He called the Freedmen's Bank the white man's milk and the black man's cow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, um, my like I think about the recession and my granddad after, around World War II, he kept all his money in his house. He did not go to, I believe, any banks.
yeah.
All his
Well, that's
money in his
why.
lot. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's why.
yeah.
I
That's
mean, because
why.
yeah, that's why. I mean, like a lot of times, the mattress was, black folk bank, color folk bank,
Yeah,
because they couldn't trust those institutions to do right by their money. I mean, and also, oftentimes we saw, especially during Jim Crow, land theft by settlers that happened to live in those areas at the time, forcing black people off of their lands and off of their and away from their livelihood. um and that's why and then that's why you had what they call the Great Migration, with a bunch of black folk leaving the
yeah,
South and going to the North because it was dangerous.
yeah.
There's a scene in what is it called, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It's a
I remember
Netflix.
saying that.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's a pretty good.
Okay,
It's based off of a play, um,
okay.
and it was one of Chadwick Boseman's last performances
Oh, I
before
gotta,
he
I
passed
have to
away.
see that then.
Yeah, and there's a
That's something Chadwick.
yeah, I miss Chadwick too. Great, wonderful actor, wonderful human
Mm,
being. But
yeah.
there's a scene in that movie where he talks about how white men came into their home, and he bought, and he talked about how his father saved his money from sharecropping to buy this land. It was he bought it from a widow who really didn't know how to make the land work because she wasn't a farmer. She wanted the just to get rid of it, so he said his father bought it, and he farmed it. Um, and he said it was good land. You can, you can grow whatever you want on that land. That's what he says. And he said one night he told, because I think that he said that his father had to leave to do some, to take care of some work or what have you. And he told, Chadwick Boseman's character, "You're in charge now." Um, then that's when these white men came in. They raped his mother. They torched a home, and they basically claimed that land for themselves. And that was something that was quite prevalent during that time period, to the point where, you know, Black people were not only leaving the South, because they wanted to go to the North to start working, in factory jobs, because that's, at the time that you saw the ramping up of the Industrial Revolution, but also because there were these very dangerous times where lynching was at an all-time high. You had a bunch of Black townships that were disenfranchised, burned down, put underwater. People, like,
Mhm.
townships completely ran out, all so that white people can take them over for themselves. And because it was Jim Crow, and Reconstruction was over, there was no protection for Black people at that time period. And that's when, um and even though, like, you had, like, the segregation that regulated Black people to certain areas that were disinvested,
The
where
redlining
yeah,
situation.
redlining,
Okay.
when banks drew specifically red lines around certain townships and areas where Black people lived and say, "Don't lend here." And we see the aftermath of that is like now, because some of the same social programs that white people were able to take advantage of in order for them to improve their socioeconomic status, Black people were not able to take advantage of. And that's why you have this chasm, this huge gap, what they call the racial wealth gap, that exists to this very day. $1 trillion collectively of wealth versus $99 trillion of wealth, of that's like within white hands. So there's definitely a case to say that reparations is not just about slavery. Because let me tell you something, and this may not necessarily be a popular opinion, but I have formulated this particular opinion based on observation and data, that Black people would have been okay financially, to the point where reparations may not necessarily be something that we would have to advocate for, if the extending of different social programs were available to them at whole, like it was to white people. Like, for instance, the GI Bill that
Mhm.
basically made America's middle class.
Okay.
And because the GI Bill was an act that was signed into law by President Roosevelt, Theodore, not Theodore Roosevelt, the one after him. God, I'm looking at his face right now. Y'all help me in the
Okay.
chat. What's that man name? Not Teddy. Franklin
This-
Delano Roosevelt, FDR.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
yes. He signed it.
He wasn't all that great to me in the end. I mean,
Mm,
I don't know.
well, I mean,
I just had a few things. There's
he
been a lot of them.
yeah.
Grandma was, that was her favorite. She loved him.
Well, I mean, to for him to even have a moniker of doing right by Black people was because of his wife. It had nothing to do with him.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Eleanor pushed him a lot when it came to,
Okay.
certain programs that he, like the WPA, which was, the workers program
Okay.
amendment that they had, that basically, would say like, hey, if you want work, we got it. You're in the federal government. And that's when they had, like, the first infrastructure bill to build roads, bridges, and things of that nature, within the United States. And then, would hire people who were not necessarily working at that particular time, and pay them to the government to do their labor. That program was not open to Black people at first. It was not. So Eleanor Roosevelt pushed her husband to extend it, like, you got to extend this to Black people too. They want to work too. Also, same thing with the Rosie the Riveter. When you actually had women going to work, and working in plants, and when the soldiers were drafted and they started to leave to go over to Europe to fight in World War II, they ended up having to take over. And a lot of times, like, Black women wanted to work as well, but they were discriminated against just because they were Black. So she had to talk to him about that, be like, do you know this is happening, honey? You need to do something about that, right? So when 1944 happens, they enact the GI Bill. um, this is an act that basically rewarded veterans for their service. They got money, they got grants to college. They got grants for homes. They got grants for for starting a business. And a lot of times, white people were able to, use this bill in order for them to purchase a home, to start a business, to go back to further their education, et cetera, et cetera. And they were even able to pass on the wealth that they gathered from that social program in order for them to build generational wealth. Well, guess who were the people who were not able to take advantage at in mass like white people were? Black GI soldiers. And
Yes.
and the problem is that even though this was a federal bill, it was distributed through states. So you had a majority of black soldiers were coming from places like Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia,
Mhm.
Texas, right? Matter of fact, like, one of the biggest areas where the majority of black folk live is in Texas, even to this day.
Yeah.
So you have examples of all these soldiers, hundreds of thousands of soldiers that are coming back from war. They're trying to take advantage of their GI Bill, and they can't. And a lot of times, um, you would get the whole thing about them being dishonorably discharged. So, like, if you don't have a clean DD 214, that means like that's the paperwork that you get when you're discharged from the armed services. And you are said that, oh well, you didn't do right, then you don't get a chance to take advantage of any of those programs. And then
Wow.
sometimes when you applied for it, they would just deny you and wouldn't even tell you why. Matter of fact, that happened to my family. My father served in
Yeah.
Korea. Yeah, I tell this
Yeah.
story a lot. My father served in Korea, and he also served in Cuba during in the
Okay.
Navy. He was in the Navy for 8 years. He did two stints in the Navy.
Okay.
And when my parents got married, within I want to say about 3 years within the marriage, my mom gets pregnant with my second sister, and my father says we need a house. So they go to the VA, fill out a bunch of paperwork,
Mhm.
submitted all this other stuff, and then they get a letter saying you've been denied. Sorry, try again. You know. Now, granted, this was before the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was signed into law. The Fair Housing Act is basically what helped my parents actually end up purchasing a home.
Oh, that was good. Okay.
Yeah, because like they tried to do that in, I think that my sister was born in '69, but my mom
And that's
passed
when
away
my
before
family
this
bought
happened.
us when they
Yeah,
first, the first one, 69, the same year here.
yeah, the same, right? Because this is like the first year that the Fair Housing Act actually was enacted. So this is like you cannot discriminate against people because of race, right? You cannot. If they have the same means to purchase a home like their white counterparts, you're supposed to lend it to them, right? My And even then sometimes that was met with bullshit. Like, my mom tells the story to us that they get denied the GI Bill. And of course, at this time, my parents was very much so in the north and in Illinois. Then they say, okay, well, let's just go for an FHA loan. Um,
Okay.
and then so they apply for it. And then at first they were denied because they were only going by my father's salary. My
Mhm.
parents had to get the help of a lawyer to demand the mortgage company give them the loan for the home, because my mother at that time was working too and said, hey, you
Oh,
are
wow.
not considering both parents' salary. And oftentimes they did anyway, because my mom is a lowly woman who, how dare you even consider her at all actually contributing to the household. so so that ended up happening.
I want to meet
So
your mom one day.
yeah, she's a spitfire, I tell you. So so yeah, so you had like all these different things, these barriers, these like, these particular um artificial barriers that were placed against black people during this 100 years, where they're not able to take advantage of a lot of um these things that really helped other groups of people be able to take advantage of the American dream. So a lot of times when I usually give this whole reparation speech, and then you get the whataboutisms,
Yeah.
and then the question is asked, what's wrong with Black people? And I have to answer, it's not necessarily something is wrong with Black people, it's what's wrong with the government, to the point that they disenfranchise Black people to the point that they are where they are today. You know, you are going, whenever there is going to be extreme poverty, there's going to be high crime. When there's extreme poverty, you're going to have low education numbers. Where there's extreme poverty, you're going to have um, all the social ills that come with that, because the resources are not there in order for human beings to be able to live, you know?
Yeah.
So, and this is why you have people to advocate, like, well, you know what? Listen, we have a very big racial wealth gap that we can trace about all the way back to lost wages or withheld wages that slaves were not able to earn. Well, they earned them, but they were not given them after they earned them. That goes to the master. When you did have an attempt to do right by these people, you only did it for a short amount of time. And then all the progress that you put into it, you had southern constituencies, specifically federal level Congress people, to say, hey, the bank ain't working and the Freedmen's Bureau ain't working, so let's just not fund them anymore. And that's what happened. You
Okay.
had a compromise between the Southern Dixiecrats and also the president that came after, I think it was Harrison, that came after um, Johnson, because Johnson was
Okay.
impeached.
Yeah.
Um, so he said, well, in order for us to basically, work with you, we want you to basically repeal everything that was concerning Reconstruction, including the Union soldiers that are there to protect ex-slaves. So he caves,
Wow.
and people are gone, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, and that is Guardian, Trevor Belmont. Yes, Cass by Isabel Wilkerson talks about these time period in length, and she basically talks about how um, the system of white supremacy within this country is a caste system based on capitalism, because in capitalism you always have to have an exploitive group in order for a certain group to amass great wealth. And we, at the majority of the life of the Americas, even before there was a United States, were that exploitive group.
Yeah, them things
So
never will change. There are a few questions. I want to deep
yes,
dive into them.
do it.
Get those out the way. But always informative information. And I need to like it's some information. See, you can remember the more like I can remember stuff, but you can like dates and times and stuff, and my mind don't remember all that. I just know the situation that might have happened. Okay,
I had to
so
write
the
all
first,
this shit down, all of this shit down.
yeah. I guess you keep saying it over and over again. It kind of gets repetitive.
Yeah.
Okay. Ways to Human, our favorite AJ.
Hey,
She
AJ.
wants to know. Well, I don't know if she's still here or not, but she says, "Tell us about being on the line, Cynthia. People loved you."
The line was a blast. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with Cortez and his insistence on calling women female.
Yes.
Oh, that was fun. I know it was a blast. I love working with Forrest and Arden, of course. I knew Arden for a while now.
Yeah.
That was the first time, and I knew of Forrest. I never actually met him in real life, and that was the first time I was actually
Yeah.
conversing with
I
him
met
even
him twice.
virtually. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
and yeah, he's a absolutely lovely person, and I had a great time, and
I'm
yeah,
so glad.
I hopefully I'll get a chance to do it again.
Yeah, I think you'll be good on Chew Gum. That's what I would think. Great on Chew Gum because you really showed it. Now, I'm going to posting the questions up. I got to remember I can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. Lil of all trades. Have you
Hmm.
been to the National Museum of African American History and the Culture before this regime? And if so, what did you think about it?
Um,
I,
that's a good question, Lil. I have not, unfortunately. When me and Mandisa and I were in Washington D.C. last year for the Second Coalition of America, we were going to go, but we ran out of time, unfortunately. Um, and it's a shame what's happening specifically at the museum. They are I mean, the curators themselves are not necessarily capitulating, but you do have people that are working within the regime that are taking out certain exhibits, especially if they have said that they are too overtly problematic according to them because of the emphasis on yeah, I said emphasis on slavery, and um and of course, like he had that whole truth and Truth and Reconciliation executive order that basically ordered a lot of these exhibits that were dedicated specifically to slavery and Black history to be taken down. Like I know that there was an exhibit, with in one of the national parks that had portions of the Underground Railroad taken down. There was a whole lawsuit in Philadelphia where the presidential house at that time, before the White House was built, it was owned by George Washington, or where George Washington lived, and they actually had placards of 9 slaves that worked for the Washingtons, and to tell their stories. And this regime decided to take it down. And
wow.
so the city of Philadelphia sued the um, the Trump administration, and they won. And the judge ordered
Mm,
for those back placards to go back up on the presidential's home, on the president's house in Philadelphia. So shout out to them. Um, but yeah, I heard it was breathtaking. I know the building that the Smithsonian's in is absolutely beautiful. I'm hoping if if the entire country does not, end up in a hell in a handbasket before this man is gone, that I'll be able to see with my own two
yeah,
twenty forties.
that's
Mm-hmm.
a whole nother subject. But
But
yeah, so you never,
there's plenty other museums other than that one that's throughout the country that have, great displays that are ran privately that he
yes.
hasn't gotten to. So check them out.
I am, and it was sad. He died like right after he created our museum, the Charles Wright Museum of
Mm,
African American Studies. It's a very good museum as well. And I
mm,
remember how they started off. It was just one room,
mm.
and everything was in one room, and then to now to go to this big museum, and they have different exhibits and stuff and movies and stuff like that. So we're gonna go tomorrow, and I think they have the Tuskegee Airmen display there as well.
Nice. Very
Or we
nice.
might go and see that as well. So that's what I'm doing with my group tomorrow.
Yay. Nice.
Matter of fact, now Skeptical Scott is his
Mm.
comment or his question for you.
What would you want future generations to say we did right when confronting our history? What would the impact of reparations now look like 50 years from now? Okay, so that's 2 questions. So let's try to tackle the first one. What would you want future generations to say we did right when confronting our history? Well, the first thing I would want them to say is that people did not sit down and just take the regime trying to basically enact erasure of Black history, because I know there's like a debate about should we call it Black history or not, because Black history is American history, you can't have American history without it, because everything that's about this country, when it comes to how it became, especially how it became an economic superpower, is because of slavery. Full stop. And we know specifically that over 12 million Africans were taken off the continent and shipped to North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. Majority of them went to Brazil.
Yeah. People don't
But
realize that.
yeah, but you did have a number of them where you would sell back and forth between the Caribbean to Central America to North America, slaves within that time period. And one of the biggest exports at the time, at first it was tobacco, and then you also had like indigo products that were dyed by slaves, and then you had cotton. And especially in one of the biggest customers of American cotton was Great Britain.
No surprise me at all.
Yeah, so they were very interested in how the Civil War was going to pan out, because a lot of their industry, especially when it came to making clothing and other goods and things of that nature, is because of the cotton that they were getting from the United States. So there you hear this whole thing called King Cotton. I mean, it's for a reason, that because like that was the thing that gave him money. And I know that you would hear like some people on the right that would say, yeah, I mean, and you have some people on the right that would say, oh no, it wasn't slavery that made the United States an economic superpower. It was the Industrial Revolution. Okay, first off, let me help you. The Industrial Revolution needed capital in order for it to, for you to build the factories, for you to build the trains, for you to build, for you to drill the oil, et cetera, et cetera. The capital came from free labor. If you are a business owner, last time I looked up, that you between 70 to 80% of your profit, that you, not necessarily profit, but income that you would get would go directly to paying labor, right? That's like paying your workers, and if you're also going to extend them benefits, the majority of your money goes to that. Imagine cutting out that entire, well, not entirely, but cutting out a majority of the money that you would have to pay wages for labor. That's not even a thing anymore. So what happens? Your bottom line increases. This is why you had at that time millionaires that was mostly in the South, because they were able to maximize their bottom line, because they're not paying their labor force. Their labor force is making them money. It's not taking away money. So yes, now we have that money that has been amassed, where you can start to invest in the Industrial Revolution, so that the United States can get more money. Now, so I would want people to know these particular things. This is why it's important for them to teach it. And in any time that you have an overt move from regimes like this to erase it, we have to stand up against it and say, not on our watch. Secondly, with your next part of the question, what would the impact of reparations look like 50 years from now? That's a good question. It has to, because I think that this will be more so like if reparations were paid. If reparations were paid to the descendants of chattel slaves in the United States, and I would even say that other people who happen to be descendants of African slaves, everyone throughout the Americas has a justice claim. Now, where their justice claim would come from would depend on the government that was over them at the time. So Brazil would be Portugal. The Caribbean will mostly be from the UK and France. Here will be us. It will be the United States. It should be to the point, and I know that Dr. Darity argues this in his book, Where Do We Come From? Where Do We Go From Here? Not no no I'm sorry, that's Dr. Martin Luther King. He basically writes about slavery reparations in the 21st century. So look up William Darity when you all get a chance. But he
I did
argues,
want to deep dive into what did you think,
yeah,
but we'll talk
yeah,
about that after I finish these questions, and
right,
then
right.
we'll talk about like what do you think that should happen.
Right, right.
But
So he argues that that reparations at the big portion of it should address the racial wealth gap. So since you have a chasm so large between black and white when it comes to the wealth share, then reparations should be should be really targeted to make sure that that gap goes away. So what you do is you look at all the institutions, organizations, statutes, laws that kept black people from being able to amass wealth, and you deal with them. And and basically, and I know that's like some people don't necessarily want to say that reparations isn't a social program. Yes, it is, because socially you are taking money from the coffers of the federal treasury and you are redistributing to these people, and you're also putting it within programs in order for them to be able to, basically achieve equity within the United States. So that's money, that's investments in education, as investments in healthcare, that's investments in infrastructure when it comes to their areas where they historically live, that comes with home ownership. Basically all the different things that you government did in order to make a middle class and beyond in the United States is what you need to do for the descendants of slavery, and then some. And so if they actually would do that, 50 years from now, you would have a people that is standing in an equitable spot in the United States that actually has access to full citizenship, because at mass, that is not something that has been available to Black people in America.
oh, it would be 100.
I know, right?
I mean,
I don't
maybe
know
I'll
if
still be alive to see the life
yeah,
change.
I don't know if I'm going
We
to be
have
alive to
pretty.
see it, but that doesn't stop you from fighting for it. Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to find any more questions that we have anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. These look like more statements and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Got to star him next time.
Oh, I don't think I forgot to do that. There's a couple of trolls in here. This is funny. Hold on. This is just a funny statement. Comment
Mm.
right now. Yes. Funny.
Oh, this is a troll.
Yes,
That
the
is,
choice what I said this is funny.
oh,
Funny comment.
that is
Troll
horseshit.
comment.
Go get a. It should be Ann by
Yeah, I
not
mean, yeah.
a
But we
a.
don't have the
You put it,
education though.
yeah. Ann is supposed to be in front of E. You're supposed to use Ann anytime that you actually have your next
Vials.
sentence starting with a vowel. Okay, so go
Yes.
get. So
AEI sometimes why.
yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and correct you on it. Go
Yes,
get an education and a job. Plus, where's the fathers? I'm out. This is a dead conversation. Peace. Okay. Yeah. I think that it's kind of interesting because like people always say go get an education and job. Do you know the largest group with degrees in the United States, who they are now? Want to
Black
guess?
women. Black
Black women.
women.
Black
That's
women.
fact.
Yeah. Black women are the largest degree holders in the United States at this particular time, yet we are the lowest paid
Hold
when
on,
it
let's see
comes to
that
the
now.
positions that we actually even though we get like positions that require degrees, because I know that the position I have requires a degree, but oftentimes we are the lowest paid when we go into businesses and also other different practices as well. So it's not that we don't have an education, it's not that we don't even have a job. It has everything to do with institutions of racism that have been enacted against us in order for
Um,
us to be able to, not be able to be on par with our white counterparts. And yeah, bless your heart. Okay, I'm over here now. There was another question that I'm going to go to while we're waiting on Miss Kelly to come back. Lil, I see there was another question. There was another question in here from Lil who said, "What's your opinion on historians that do living history characters portraying slaves?" One amazing lady at Mount Vernon said, "Who better to tell our story but us?" Yeah, I agree. Um, I know that. I know that, like, a lot of times, like, you do have a sector of the black population that would say that they don't necessarily want to see another slave story. They feel triggered. This is something that, like, they are looking to expand as far as, like, our history is concerned. And I don't necessarily have an issue with telling a large swath of our story beyond slavery, because we have shown up in so many different areas, and not just that, but being able to continue talking about slavery and educating about slavery is absolutely a must, because that is what the country was built on. It was built on the backs of slaves. Paul Robeson said this on Australian TV. He said, on the backs of my ancestors were built the primary wealth of this nation, not the secondary or tertiary. Primary wealth. You have to have accumulated weight to have secondary and tertiary wealth. Primary wealth, in order for you to be able to do all the wonderful things that the United States have done, would definitely have to had built in some type of institutional form in order for them to be able to amass that wealth. That was slavery, full stop. So yes, we need to keep on talking about it. We need to keep showing it. And yes, Black folk should be the ones who are the primary people that's in front telling it, because it was through our ancestors where that experience was garnered in the first place. Hmm.
I do not what is going on. I cannot hear. And this is my phone. I don't know. First it was the tablet, now it's my phone. I don't know if you can hear me, but give me 1 second. I'm gonna try to come back again.
Okay. All righty. Yes. That's unfortunate that she's having some problems, but it's unfortunate. Um, I'm going to read your comment, Dean. I see on reparations, what needs to happen to move this from a conversation to action? Is this a legal battle? Interested in the practical implementation, in your opinion? Yeah. So there has been concerted efforts in order to turn this from a conversation to action. I mean, there have been activists pushing for forms of reparations since the Civil War ended, right? So yeah, we had General Tecumseh Sherman, but we also had activism from these two ex-slaves named Callie House and Reverend Isaiah Dickerson. They formulated an organization where they were trying to set up a pension fund for ex-slaves, and they wanted to be paid by the American government. And at one time, they amassed at least about, I want to say, over 500,000 members. That's what I want to say, but I could be wrong. It was a lot, though. A lot of members who were ex-slaves, who were really trying to put the petition forward to the federal government to start this slavery pension. Um, Unfortunately, the main things that usually happen to, Black people who were doing this particular social justice work, um, targeted, infiltrated, different things of that nature, is what happened. And then also, to your point, your question about legal battle, there was also a lawsuit that was done I want to say in the early 2000s, where but it was struck down by an appellate court right here in Illinois, concerning the slavery reparations, because the concurrent opinion was that this needs to be legislation. And we have examples of reparations being paid to other groups where that was legislation. Matter of fact, in 1988, Ronald Reagan signed into law the Civil Act of 1988, which the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which paid reparations to Japanese Americans and their first generation descendants who were interned into camps during World War II. So they got $20,000 per person, and if the persons who were supposed to get it and they happened to die before the distribution, it went to their immediate relatives, next generation relatives, most of their children. And then when when the Civil Liberties Act of 1988 was signed into law, Representative John Conyers, a Black man who served in Congress at the time, said that he got the idea of doing legislation based on reparations for those who descended from chattel who were they call the African people, descendants of African slaves, and that's where we get HR 40, which was named that after the 40 acres land grant, General Order number 15. So that has been introduced into Congress since 1989. We finally got some kind of movement on that bill between 2019 and 2020, but it never came to the open floor for a vote. So it was then after Representative John Conyers retired and then he ended up passing away, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee took over and started to introduce that particular bill. And then she passed away. And then it went down to Representative Cori Bush, but unfortunately she was not able to win her bid to be reelected to Congress. And now Representative Ayanna Pressley is the person who has reintroduced that bill, but it's still within I want to say the whatever 119th, 120th Congress. It hasn't never came to a vote. I sincerely doubt that it would come to a vote, especially with the Speaker of the House. But in my opinion, and my opinion is based on data and what we have seen historically when it comes to actually seeing some type of movement when it came to any type of group being paid reparations, is that it needs to be legislation. So I don't necessarily think that HR 40 is really a good bill for us to utilize. I have seen better bills, but one of the main things that HR 40 does is create a commission that will study reparations and come up with recommendations that they can give to the federal government. And then, from there would be another bill to actually enact the recommendations that would, come from this particular commission. So regardless, whether if it's HR 40 or whether it is another bill that will be a bit more robust, legislation.
Okay. I don't know what question you were answering. Let me know.
I was asked, Dean Kruger had a question about, basically how would I see reparations coming about. Oh, I see this last question from Guardian Trevor Belmont.
It's a couple more, and I'm gonna pull them up as well.
Okay.
But you can say that. Let me see. Where's that question? Let me find it.
It's at I think it's at the very bottom of the comments. It's what do you
Okay.
think about the idea of a reverse migration, a reverse great migration?
I don't know, both of my phones, my tablet, and then my iPhone acted stupid.
Oh,
Both of them I couldn't hear it. So
oh,
now I'm on this little Motorola
oh,
phone.
oh my God.
I
Okay.
can wait
Well,
till I get another laptop, probably the next week or so. I'll get another laptop.
fingers crossed. Yes, let's everybody crowdfund so we can get Kelly a new laptop, please.
Pray
So
about it.
right. Then girl, it ain't never gonna happen. You might as well just go ahead and get the community together, and then we go ahead and get y'all go get your laptop. But reverse migrate. There is, and I know that the who are those people? The NOI, which is the oh God, the Nation of Islam. Yes, the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam has like their own idea of what reparations will look like, and that would be a basically an annexing of southern states given directly to black folk. That's like Georgia, Florida, Alabama, like places like that. Generationally, we lived and worked as slaves. Um, uh, would a great migration to the South be a good thing? I don't know. I would say that it could help as far as representation when it comes to a shift in political power. Um, you have more black folk who possibly will move to the South. We can flip some seats, especially in Congress, to be and get more people to run. That is more amiable to policies that will be good for African Americans. That is something that has been espoused, and I don't necessarily have an issue with. Um, I know right now that especially in the South, um, it's red hot as far as the policies that we would really see that are coming from state legislatures and also people who are working specifically with the regime to dilute the vote. I mean, you had the FBI under the direction of Cash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard go to Fulton County in Georgia to steal voter rolls and to do the spaghetti monster knows with those votes, right? And this is a concerted effort to basically, steal the midterms and then eventually steal the 2028 election, because we know that one of the reasons why Joe Biden won in 2020 is because Georgia flipped. And Georgia flipped because there was a concerted effort by Stacey Abrams and her organization to get more and more Black people to register to vote, especially when you had Brian Kemp, who was running for governor and who was also the Secretary of State of Georgia at that time, basically kick off over 50,000 people off of the voter rolls, and the majority of the people that got kicked out were Black. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so there's that thing about well, maybe we just need to go back to the South and get more Black people to move back to the South in order for us to be able to to concentrate political power. I know that Charles Blow talks about doing that. He wrote The Devil You Know. I think that he describes that a lot in that book. It's a very good book. I got a chance to interview him, well, along with others, a few years back when the book first came out. Um, yeah, so I mean, so there's that. I mean, regardless of how it's done, and if there is a great migration to the South, where people would, go into southern states in order for them to concentrate political power, so that we can get more people that's in the seats in Congress in order for us to be able to pass this legislation, hey, I'm for it. I don't know if I'm going to be leaving Chicago anytime soon. I kind of am concerned about going there, and some of these southern states have terrible laws and
Yeah,
track records when it comes to maternal health and
exactly.
women's health.
That's
Um,
scary.
yeah, I mean, it ain't all that great, in the north, but damn, in the south, my goodness,
You know, it's so funny. I
scary,
was I
scary
was
shit.
looking at the TikTok and this girl, and so it's so sad because many people still don't know about the Black non-believers.
Hmm.
And so one girl was like, "Well, I'm gonna go to Midwest so I can be a free atheist." And I'm like, "It's not as," I said, "Many of our family live here too from down south,
Hmm.
so it is just as churchy here than it is in." It, and you don't, like, again, you
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah, well, they got,
Y'all
yeah, it's
better,
a lot
they
of
got
black
church on
folk.
every corner, every damn
Every
corner.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I think that's prevalent in a lot of different black neighborhoods, whether if you're in the north or the south. You know what they
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
you got a church on one corner and a liquor store on the other,
Yeah.
and yes, like,
And now with a dispensary over here.
yeah, that's yeah, we got a dispensary, got a couple of them here too, but there, I can understand that culturally, um in the South, Black people living there, it's very, um, a lot of believers, right? And it's and you would think that people in the North would be a bit more free to be able to express themselves when it comes to non-belief. Um, and I would say that, the possibility of finding more black atheists has a tendency to be a bit, um what's the word I'm looking for, like the probability of finding them is a bit higher in the north,
Okay.
but
Yes.
doesn't mean that the probability is that much higher, if that's the case.
I'm gonna run through a few of these questions, a couple more questions, because we have to get out of here. I do have to be on in the cut in a minute.
Yes.
Um, you know, can you see everything? Because it's kind of small to me.
Well, I was on
I can.
politically with you. I loved it. I loved it. I'm hoping that we can do it again. We had a blast talking about the racist that was being confirmed to be a part of the State Department. And oh my God, y'all listen. It's interesting to me, especially in this regime, how they just saying the quiet part out loud when it comes to the type of people that they are wanting to occupy certain areas in, especially in the executive branch. It's insane. Like, I mean, like, a lot of these people are inept. They're nowhere near qualified. They scream about meritocracy all the time, and they are overt, flat white Christian nationalist, racist. And all I know is, y'all listen, buckle up, and especially like if you are in some of these states where it is, where you have people who are running against this regime, please support them.
Yes.
um and then and let's not stay at home when it's time for us to vote. Like, let's
Please
let's
don't.
yeah, because like, if we do that, we're basically handing the country to the fascist. And
Like you did
and if
last time.
yeah, and if we hand the country over to the fascists, there will be no United States any longer.
Yeah. So this is one more from Lil as well.
Mm. Oh yeah, I answered that question already.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I answered that question already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then it might be everything then.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. Working well, we already know find at the roots of matter. But any final comments before we leave?
Yeah, if you're not subscribed to my channel, do it now.
Do it
I
now.
gotta tomorrow, actually, Mandiza will be on. We're going
Okay.
to do our second part of protest songs. Um, we're going to be talking about Gil Scott-Heron.
I don't
Um,
remember that one. We were
and
talking about
he's
Sunday
the
Cookie
he's the
the
guy
first
who
time, right?
wrote the revolution will not be televised. So we're going to talk about
Oh, I
that.
got you. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and a couple of other songs by him. I think we're going to do Show Business and also In the Bottle. So yeah, we're rounding out Black history with that particular conversation. So that should be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll be live at 6 p.m. Central. So make sure you guys check us out.
And then after that, you can check me out on my Atkinson's channel at Bad Science Sunday at
Yes.
8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So we will be there. I have my a local event, and then later on I'll be on Bad Science Sunday, and I'm about to dip out of this chat to go to the Black non-believers in their
Yes. I'll be
case.
in that.
We
I'll,
have
I'll
we
be in
have
that chat too.
Javon Bradley coming
Yeah.
on. I'm like super excited. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Woohoo,
So I'm excited about that. So I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna be hosting. I'm just probably gonna be in the backstage like I normally am.
Mm.
But today, really, Sugar birthday. She is
Happy birthday, Sugar.
Sugar. How old is Sugar? 16. She's 9. Sugar's
Oh
9.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. I think this is a great conversation, but nothing new dealing with Cynthia. Um, thank you
Again,
everybody for
let's
coming out of questions. If
to get
there was
Kelly a new laptop.
any if there was any questions that did not get answered, I'm sorry. But I don't know, every device I have is acting stupid. And I'm on this small little penny phone. But
Mm.
until next time, I don't have anything on my channel until the 7th of right now. So until then, I will see everybody later.
Take care, everybody.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride.